Welcome, Red Spotters, an audio commentary on Star Wars The Last Jedi. Yes, that one, and yes, another one of those. I'm your host today, Alexis Soto, and I am joined by the lovely panelists, Alexis Moreno and David Francisco. How are you guys doing?
Very good.
We're here doing a commentary on The Last Jedi, which everyone knows is seemingly the most controversial film of the entire existence of media, it seems like, in terms of its just plain existence. So we'll try to, stay on task stay on target, as they say. With talking about and keeping the focus on what's actually happening in front of us, and with stuff that we actually liked, and further insight that we'll bring into the table from features that we've seen from Rian Johnson. But being this a controversial film, but people who know us know it's no secret that this film is universally beloved by every single one of us right now on this panel, right?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
In some instances, it may be the best Star Wars movie for some of us. So, which is, not really something that people would have thought of for any of the sequel films. What was curious aspect of going up into this movie. By the way, we're going to see Billie Lourd right here as Connix, which thankfully Rian used her a lot more in this movie. We see her off in the background and actually getting some dialogue. I'm not even sure if she had. I'm not sure if she had any dialogue in The Force Awakens, but as we know, J.J. Abrams can't really utilize many characters that well, can he? But as far as there I go. I'm sorry. That'll be the end of it.
Okay.
But I'm sorry. I won't. But remember, we were spending so much time thinking, okay, but how are they gonna? Is there even gonna be a crawl? Because this movie is gonna basically pick up where the last one left off, and that's never really happened with any of the other Star Wars movies. There's usually a huge passage of time in between the movies. And so I think to me, what I would consider one of the challenges is how to start this movie with the thing that everybody wants to immediately go back to is Luke. For many reasons, some fans were burned by that, and good for them. We'll get to that later on. But I love this action sequence so fucking much. I love this space battle so fucking much.
Every action sequence in this movie is
and we're gonna
amazing.
we'll keep saying that for sure, but I think it was a great way to start the movie, because what's more Star Wars than a space battle and an escape sequence? There's so much to go on here, but I think in general, it's not just that it's amazing and beautiful to look at. This is all serving a story purpose, which I think people who would say that they're huge detractors of the film, I don't think to my honestly opinion, they don't really recognize the story that's happening, the story stuff that happens. So this whole thing that we're seeing right now is the beginning of Poe's character arc. Those exist for this movie, and we're seeing here
the only time he gets a character arc.
Yeah, because somebody else directed the other two movies. We won't mention his name. So there's a lot going on here. One of the things that, because I was revisiting the commentary from Rian Johnson on The Last Jedi, and he said that the very first thing that he did in terms of figuring out what this movie was going to be is he wrote down the names of all the main characters, and he wrote down, you know, some very basic things like, what do I know about them? What do I think they want most? And what road, and what would be the hardest thing for them? And when you just like hear that put into words, you just think to yourself, well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the most sensible way to approach this story, right? Because in many ways, a lot of the characters weren't necessarily much more than archetypes in the previous movie. In the case, as Alexis just mentioned, with Poe Dameron, he was, I think we joked about this in one of the videos when Force Awakens came out, but we basically, Peter and I joked that somebody put Luke Skywalker and Han Solo in a blender, and there you go. And there, that was basically Poe Dameron.
Which is ridiculous. Like, I'm sorry.
But that's what it felt like. Also, Captain Kennedy here is fantastic. I love the actors, the character actors that they have here throughout, you know, for the Imperials. But, you know, this is a beautiful sequence, not just in terms of its, you know, pretty lights that go off in the explosions and everything. I mean, those are, you know, always, you know, appreciated. But this right here with Poe is what we're going to see at the very end of the movie with a role reversal. So this whole back and forth here that we're seeing with Leia and Poe, we see it repeated at the end of the movie with Finn and Poe. With Poe and having gone through this arc where he's now basically learned from his mistakes, and then also Finn growing as a person to the point where he is now that, you know, strong-headed rebel that that Poe is at the beginning of the movie. And so I think it is clear from just the outset of what we're looking at right now, and basically what, you know, the information that I got from the commentary, Ryan's main thing was to make a good movie, and you make a good movie by fleshing out your characters.
Yeah,
and to
which
me,
is common sense.
It's common sense, but that's what you do in a series like this, in a franchise like this. The middle chapter, you know, most people think of the middle chapter is supposed to be the darkest, but it's really just it can be. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you okay?
I just get so mad as to why people don't like this movie, because it does not make sense to me. But, like, if you're gonna do 3 movies, obviously the middle movie is to give your characters character, and this is what this movie does.
You give them the space to grow, you know? You give them the space to grow. You give them the stories that people remember the fondest. You know, when you think back to the original trilogy, there's a reason why people remember Empire, you know, with the fondest of memories compared to the other 2 movies. Not that the other 2 weren't great, but there's a reason why that was the one that, you know, people remembered the most. And so when you look at our main characters with Poe, with Finn, Rey, Kylo Ren, they're all given substantial arcs in this film that, I think, for all of us, I think solidified why we love them as characters. By the way, look at these pretty explosions. Something I really admire is I don't think there's another movie ever where I just could sit and watch the explosions. They're beautiful. And here is Paige Tico, who, believe it or not, gets more screen time in this movie than her sister gets in episode 9. So, isn't... Yeah.
Towards the end, you get Rose say that line of, "It's how we win this war, not by fighting who we hate, but protecting who we love."
Saving who we love, yes.
Saving who we love. And some people found it kind of ridiculous. And one excuse that they use is that, oh, but your sister died fighting who she hated. And what Rose says, it's sort of like a the glass is half full, the glass is half empty type of situation, Both sides are right, but really just your perspective says a lot about you, really. If you say, you win this war by fighting who you hate, it's kind of like, that's sort of the talk of the villain that's willing to give up anyone to win the war.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least, not the villain, but at least the bad general,
Right.
Again, they use this scene as a way to say, hey, your sister died fighting who she hated. But no, look right there. She's holding on to the necklace, which Rose has the other half. The whole time, she's thinking about Rose. And that she's in that ship right now where, Leia is. She wants to, save her.
Right. And Rhea, and not Rhea, well,
Rhea.
Leia senses that, which is why we just saw her looking up. She's sensing what's about to happen right now with Paige.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can almost say she almost sensed her love of her. See, right there again,
mm-hmm.
She's touching her necklace. She's thinking about Rose. She didn't care who she was fighting, really. She was only thinking about Rose.
And protecting her, because Rose is on that ship, and she would have died if it, weren't for her sacrifice.
Just anyone that says it's kind of ridiculous.
Rest in peace, Captain Kennedy.
And if you really want to show that, she wanted Rose's sister was fighting who she hated,
mm-hmm.
then Ryan would have shot that scene differently. I think he would have shot it with her looking straight ahead at the ship, where, that general of the ship is there, kind of thinking, I got you, bitch. But no, the last thing she did was to hold on to her necklace.
That's a really great point, David. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you know what? No, that's actually pretty... You basically shot down those assholes that say that. Interesting here with General Hux, which I love in this movie. You see, I think this is, to me, the difference why Ryan is just a great filmmaker. He, even if for the side characters, he still finds things for them to do in the movie mm-hmm. that serve a purpose. And turning this Nazi youth guy into comedic relief was the best decision, I think, for that character. When I think of Hux, I think of this movie and don't really think of any of the other movies at all. And so there's many instances where Hux is basically just a joke. And you see commanders around him by the way, this shot right here, from the commentary, this was supposed to be the original opening shot of the movie.
Yeah, I remember that. People were confused by the start of it, or
it didn't pack that punch, basically, at least for me. But the way it was is that the crawl would have happened, and then the camera would have panned down to silence, and then we would have seen Finn in that shot. But then this right here would have. So what happened is the movie would have opened with the crawl, and then Finn, then the battle, and then we'd cut to this. So yeah, it was a lot more. It was a lot more jumbled.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And a theme that I picked up from the commentary by Rian Johnson, which he has an amazing caliber of cinematic knowledge. I mean, seriously, he is so great to listen to. But we'll get to this right here. But one of the themes that I picked up on is that originally he was going to have a lot more intercutting throughout the whole movie, which meant less space to breathe. So changes happened in editing for sure. And so here we are. And this was filmed in the same location, obviously, as episode 7. Not all of the scenes on the island, of course, are on the island because it's not that big. They don't have, the safety or to even record. I mean, not record, but film there. And I think this is one of the first things that they filmed, and they were waiting for the sun to go away, but it just never did. Because if you recall in the end of episode 7, at this exact moment, the sun wasn't really out. So they had gone to the island, and of course the sun was out, but they wanted to make it look as close to how it was at the end of The Force Awakens. But unfortunately that didn't happen. Although I'm not sure if people are too angry about that. And the moment we just witnessed happened, it's the lightsaber throw that, pissed off the world.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, David, and please, I want you to say what you were going to say, but just like, what was going through your mind when you first saw that? The first time you watched this movie and you saw Luke Skywalker, what was your knee-jerk reaction?
I laughed, really.
Me too.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny because, what else can he say in that situation, though? I can't really think of anything.
I was laughing. I mean, I wasn't laughing hard, but I was just I was laughing in the dickish kind of way where it was like, oh my God, they just pissed off so many people and I love it. Because, with these Star Wars movies, you go through months and months and months of these horseshit ideas and theories that apparently only happen in J.J. Abrams movies. But in this case, to see that lightsaber just being thrown out of the way, was the ultimate fuck you. I mean, I don't think it's saying fuck you to fans of Luke Skywalker. And I don't even think it's saying fuck you to Star Wars fans. I take it as a fuck you because it just threw so many theories out the window. And to me, that was the first taste that you get that this is not going to go the way you think.
Yeah. Oh, in your guys' last commentary,
which I don't remember.
Peter said that he really liked the editing in the beginning of the movie, and especially I noticed it on this part where we see where Luke sees Chewie, and he's like, "Where's Han?" And it immediately cuts to Kylo. And I mean, there's some things that I do agree with. Some people say that hate this movie. So in this particular scene, where Luke says, "Wait, where's Han?" You're supposed to see his reaction that he realizes that he died, and I agree. Yes, that would have been a great scene to watch. It would have made people cry. Just something to take in. But at the same time, though, I understood why he cut it to just straight to Kylo. It's because some people's reaction would be, "Yeah, oh man, he's gonna get hurt. What is he gonna do? Is he gonna fall? Is he gonna start crying or something?" But my first thought was, fucking his son killed him. And then it cuts to his son. And so I thought it was a great idea. You never really know what people's reaction is going to be. So again, I understand why people didn't like that he cut it. But at the same time, I also understood why he cut to Kylo after that.
It was an amazing transition. And I couldn't agree with you more with every word of what you just said. I mean, one of the original cutaways was we were going to see Luke's reaction, and then Luke was going to go back in it. It's on a deleted scene. I'm sure you've seen it, but some of you, if you want to see it, it's on the extras. I'm sure it's on Disney Plus. But what happens is he goes back into his hut. He basically breaks down and he cries because Han died. And then it was a beautiful cutaway because it then cut to Leia, which we do see in the movie, I think, after this scene, or a few scenes after this. It cuts to Leia on her ship and with her, her hand on her forehead. And it was just a beautiful transition of Luke and Leia. And it pained me to see that was not in the final version of the movie. But again, it was ultimately sacrificed for the development of Kylo Ren and for a better transition. That was an amazing transition to this scene, which is also pretty great. And it's great to see Kylo Ren, have a dressing down of sorts. And this is the beginning of him in this movie. And in some ways, Snoke is channeling a lot of those Kylo Ren detractors from the Force Awakens days. And hey bitch, what the fuck? You weren't supposed to be like this.
Remind me, I don't remember if I am imagining this. He is Palpatine, right?
Yes.
Who? I could we not? I mean, supposedly in the canon, he's that's a puppet controlled by Palpatine. Yes.
Okay.
I don't acknowledge that though because
no.
I'd rather not. And then you see oh God, you're so right, David. I mean, those transitions. I mean, we effortlessly, went back and forth between Octu to the Supremacy, the Star Destroyer of Supreme Leader Snoke.
I was gonna bring up when we first see Luke. Again, I understand why people didn't like this Luke Skywalker. He is grumpy. He is feeling isolated, and I would have liked to seen him, be that whole, oh, what you want me to do? Just come in, like swing a light sword around, be a badass, basically. Yeah, I would have liked that too. But this is also enjoyable.
But we kind of already got that.
I think the distinction there is here. I think I agree with Alexis. We did get that in this movie, except I think the distinction would be is that Luke Skywalker became that legend, but through, I think, a different way. What people wanted to see is Luke with a lightsaber, literally like blow things up, destroy things with his lightsaber, bring down the walkers. Like they wanted him to have these superhuman abilities, and be a badass and like, do flips and how like that flip in episode 3 where Count Dooku like does a backflip for whatever fucking reason. When he's about to go, face off against Obi-Wan and Anakin. I think they wanted to see that Luke Skywalker, but obviously with a cheery disposition. And none of that basically happens. And that pissed off people because that's what they were expecting to see. And just by not getting those like that laundry list of, requirements, they were upset.
And it's kind of funny that like he kind of turned into this grumpy man. Obviously, like things happened, which we get to see in this movie that made him this way, but also the pressure that everybody put on him.
Right.
Like it got to him.
It's the reason why he's there, basically.
Yeah, and it's like funny that like in real life, they were like actual people were putting pressure for him to be that way. Like the perception that everybody had of him in their minds was like this great like warrior type of person, and it's like no, like he's human.
But I think what you just touched right there is a fundamental flaw of the people we just talked about in their way of thinking, in terms of, at least from my perspective, the flaw in how they perceive Star Wars to be. Again, David has mentioned many times, people think of Star Wars as different things, and that's true just by its very nature. But as, the director, Rian Johnson, he lays it down pretty clear. There's so many clips of him saying this. The Force is not a superpower. And one of the main things that he wanted to do with this movie was to have a reset for new viewers, for new audiences, in terms of that way for younger people to reevaluate what it is, what the Force means, what the Force is. And when he says that it's not a superpower, it's like that all went out the window in the successive film when you have the Emperor shooting massive lightning out into the sky and disabling an armada of ships, because that's normal, right? No, it's not. And all of those things of having Luke Skywalker use lightsabers and killing people and using his Force abilities to bring a Star Destroyer down, and that would just undo the entire point of this movie, which was at its bare, what is the Force? And people don't understand that, it seems, or at least people don't have that interpretation of what the Force is to them or what Star Wars is to them. And again, Rian Johnson had to find a reason for why it was that Luke was on this island. J.J. Abrams was the person who put him on that island, again, with no reasoning as to why he would be. He was just, we'll put him on an island. We'll make the whole movie about finding Luke Skywalker, and that's as far as it got. So it was Ryan's job to find a reason for why Luke is here. And to me, the thing that I was most intrigued by in the trailer for this film years ago was the ending where he says, "It's time for the Jedi to end." And you know what? I think a lot of people are fundamentally put off by the notion of that, of even having that discussion. I'd love to have that discussion because the Jedi is, you know, those of us, and by the way, Moreno and France and David here and me, we're like canon junkies to an extent. Like we love Star Wars and we've seen a lot of Clone Wars and, you know, a bunch of other universe things. And I don't think it's anything controversial to say that what the Jedi did should be questioned.
Yeah. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, the Jedi were cocky. They were cocky shits. And
they were corrupt, I think a better word.
And yeah, like, it makes sense for Luke to be like, no, like, we need to think about it differently now. Like, everything's changed. Look at our history. Let's not repeat the history. Like,
Also, I hated those conversations with people going, "Oh, what if there's a gray side?" I'm like, no.
Fuck them. That's not what this is.
Oh god, I hated that. Like, what's the gray side? That makes no sense.
There's no such thing as gray Jedi. Fuck off with that.
Yes.
Here, this beautiful shot with Carrie Fisher, who's I think never been better in this movie, and I think my favorite performance of Leia, really, I think in Last Jedi. But that whole scene right there where Leia was just you know, Ryan said this in the commentary. He wanted to have a quiet moment for her to just process all the loss. I mean, she lost like what, Han, not even 2 days ago. So, and then also all the people who were just sacrificed by Poe right there, and basically the entire bombing squad. So it's, you know, I think it's important to see Leia, although they feel like one and the same sometimes, don't they? Have Leia have a moment to process, because it's just been basically her whole life has just been losing people. And I don't know if you noticed this, because one of the things Ryan talks about is he wanted Leia to look elegant and just gorgeous in this movie, and I love her costume. I think I saw this in some kind of visual dictionary or something, I'm not sure where from, but her look in this movie is really inspired by her adopted father, Bail Organa. Like, as far as like the color scheme of what she's wearing is something that I think was inspired by Bail's attire when he was a senator.
Wow, that's nice.
I can see it. As soon as you pointed it out, I'm like, oh, I see it.
Yeah, you see it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And her hair's great here too. I mean, they always find a way to make her hair. I noticed that I know we're gonna get into a whole discussion about hair. Okay, get over it. But I noticed in like we never acknowledged this before, but in The Force Awakens they did something where like they CGI'd part of her actual hair out, Carrie Fisher's hair out of the movie, because if you looked at in the filming of The Force Awakens, Carrie Fisher had a braid going down. She had longer hair and she had a braid going down, and what happened was that, well, that's not what you see obviously in the movie, so they had to they VFX that out. And I don't know, I think what we saw, because she had like a long tail braid, something like that. I would have preferred to have seen that in the movie instead of like what, I don't know, I don't recall much of Force Awakens Leia, because she really wasn't in the movie. She wasn't in the movie. Yeah, she wasn't in the movie all that much. But they made her look like royalty basically here, which good. And I think I even love how like much more angelic she gets later in the movie, where she gets that staff and she wears the coat like more like prominently. The costume people did a great job in general, but with Leia, I really loved her look in the movie. Should we talk about what happens here? So right now, the bridge is about to be attacked. We have an emotional moment here with Kylo Ren and with with Leia. And I remember Alexis and I, we were in the same place. We were doing a project or something, and we were there when they dropped the trailer, the final trailer for The Last Jedi. And I remember we were watching that together, and part of what we're seeing right now was in that trailer, if you recall, quite prominently. The moment of, Kylo Ren, whether or not to basically end her mother's life. And I recall when we were watching that together, Alexis, I looked over to you and you were like basically crying.
Yep.
And I think that's what makes him such an interesting character. It's like
he's just so broken.
He's so broken, and he's so like, I think he would be a different character if he was just like straight up evil and like with no redeeming qualities. But I think what you see in almost every scene of Kylo Ren is somewhere in there you do see Ben, pulling to the light even after he killed Han Solo, which was mentioned by Snoke in the beginning, right? Like the deed split your spirit to the bone. So yeah, I think that's what just makes him a unique character. It's just throughout the film, he keeps going, back and forth, just by the very nature of who he is.
Yeah. I don't know if I would have liked if he was full on villain. Like, it would have been interesting and it would have been cool.
It wouldn't have been as interesting. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been as interesting as what we got. So I'm happy with what this is, just to be clear about that. So this here in the commentary, we'll get to people's like ridiculous gripes about this scene in a minute, but I wanted to say this. So in the commentary, Ryan was saying that this Leia using the Force came from Kathy Kennedy, because Kathy had talked with Ryan about wanting Leia to have a moment using the Force in some way, because it had been teased all the way back in Jedi. And he just wanted something, she wanted a special moment for Leia in the movie. And in this instant, and just so people who flip out about like the ridiculousness of why people don't like this particular scene, like what happened in that moment when she was in the vacuum of space is basically her deciding, no, this is not how it ends. This is not it. And Rian Johnson compared that to the stories that we hear of moms getting an adrenaline rush and like lifting up a car to save their baby. Because those are, like that instinct, it just kicked in, and she used her ability to bring herself back to the ship. That doesn't mean that she was okay, because obviously we see that she was barely hanging on, because she was in space for being in space in any amount of time is not good for you, but it took everything she had to basically keep from dying. And to me, there are so many reasons. I think that's a great explanation, but it's like, I can't believe that was also one of those things that pissed people off. Right? Like, how did you guys take that scene?
From what I get, because whenever I ask people and they're like on the fence about liking this movie, this is the scene that's like, no, like that was stupid. And it's because of the way that it looked.
Which I think it's fine. I mean, maybe it could have been shot better. Maybe she could have been in a different position. I don't know. But the concept of it is still cool. I mean, she literally pulled herself back from the vacuum of space and all that. And we got to see her use the Force for once.
It was an empowering moment. And I think to me, it was just emotional. Because, I mean, this is in a time, the movie came out after Carrie Fisher had passed away. And to see Leia like say, no, this is not where my story ends, and her coming back was a triumphant moment for her. And people like, made fun of it, like, oh, it looks like Peter Pan, or she was flying in space. And like, when people start talking about that, I'm just immediately turned off, because it's like, first of all, you don't fly in space. Like, she was using the fucking Force. She's the daughter of fucking Darth Vader. Like, and she was trained by Luke, evidently, even though.
Didn't he survive the vacuum of space? Like, didn't he get shot down?
Vader?
Yeah. The first one?
Yeah, I mean, there are other instances where, like, there's Kanan Jarrus from Star Wars Rebels was pulled out into space by Darth Maul. There was an episode there, and Kanan Jarrus pulled himself back using the Force. Go figure. Like, it happened before. I just don't understand why I guess you would call them Star Wars purists, latch onto those arguments like, oh, you can't fly in space and all this shit and everything, and it looked ridiculous. And I'm like, I understand if it looked ridiculous, fine, that's legitimate, but all the other reasons I think are just laughable to me, like, as far as all of that. We just talked over a part that I wanted to talk about, which was R2-D2 and Luke Skywalker. How did you guys feel watching that?
Oh, it was so great. It was a great callback to A New Hope, and it's really one of the only moments where
a great example of how to use old stuff from other movies.
Add a reference or
to push the story forward. And more importantly, that makes sense and that you can follow.
It's also one of the only moments where you got to see Luke smile and be kind of cheerful for a moment. So it was nice to see.
What was beautiful about, Mark Hamill's performance in that scene was, even though you're looking at old Luke, you saw a young Luke in there when he lit up and he was basically saying R2, like that brought you back. Yeah, that was a beautiful moment. So here we have Vice Admiral Holdo. Guys,
I don't get why people don't like her.
Thank you.
It's so confusing. Is it because she's a woman? It's because she's a woman, huh? Wow.
That's some of the reasons. The other ones I don't know.
Ridiculous.
You know what's ironic about that is when I was listening to Ryan talk about why it was that he created the character of Vice Admiral Holdo as, the one that would take over, is to basically throw a particular trope on its head. And that is, in situations like these and other kind of movies, you would usually have this big, gruff, like, military, like, guy that would come and take command, like, oh, I don't know, Akbar, for example. Sounds like that, and even then, people were throwing his name out there to who would have replaced Leia in the chain of command. But the reason why he wanted it to be Laura Dern was because he wanted the dynamic to be different with because Laura Dern is the last person you expect basically to, like, be in command of the resistance in Leia's absence, depending on who you are, right? But she doesn't look like a military admiral or general, whatever.
Which is, okay, like, it's so stupid to me, because it's like, how can you be against her becoming in charge? Like, yes, this is the first time we see her, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, so what do you have to say about Leia? Like, it does not make sense.
Like, basically, a lot of people's problems, from what we seem to gather, is, oh, you don't like a woman being in charge. Because that's the only explanation I can tell, based on the extreme hatred. I mean, people were also pissed off that she dared to have purple hair. I don't even want to dignify that with any more of a response. But I think clearly what Ryan did pissed people off, because some people just... There are some deep-seated truths that I don't think people acknowledge about themselves. Let's just be real about the response to Vice Admiral Holdo.
And either way, if she was a woman or if she was a man, like, the things that she did to help everybody, like, that should speak for itself. It doesn't matter who it was. Like, she sacrificed herself to save everybody that was left. I hate people.
I think what it also was is that because she really doesn't necessarily treat Poe the best, and for good reason, but a lot of guys, I would just think, took that the wrong way. Like, you had this, like, who's this, like, nobody woman telling Poe what the cool guy what to do. I'm just gonna
watch every other movie where a woman wants to be in charge.
Yeah. The hate for Vice Admiral Holdo is just I think it borders on psychotic. And we should talk about the wonderful Kelly Marie Tran as Rose Tico.
First, I want to say, John Boyega is freaking hilarious, man. I love that scene when they first interact, and he's just kind of like trying to act all cool and everything. And I love the way he tries to like inspire her in the situation, and just when he goes, "May the force be with you." Oh my god, I don't know. It's hilarious.
No, it's hilarious, and Ryan talked about Rose Tico and why it is that he wrote that character. And in many ways, when he says that, it's true when he says he wrote Rose Tico as that girl he would have hung out in high school. Basically kind of an outcast. And it was intentional to make her look as grungy and beat up and just about in as low of a position as you could be in the Resistance. As we find her right now in this particular sequence, because he does this several times, but basically Kelly Marie Tran's Rose Tico is a way of Ryan putting himself into the movie. There are two outlets, right? So you can see like Rose Tico embodying the people who you don't get to see in the rebellion, in the Resistance. She's not a Jedi, she's not a general, she's basically working in the pipes. Like
sorry, hold on. This line right here. Him saying that he mopped the ship where they're supposed to infiltrate. Come on. Really? That's one of my complaints about this movie. It's just like, oh, you just happen to mop up the Starkiller base and the ship that you're supposed to infiltrate? Okay. But whatever.
You took that literally?
What do you mean?
I mean, I don't know. It's the supremacy. It's the
well. I mean, it's just like a weird coincidence. That's all it is, really.
Okay. And the other outlet that Ryan used was obviously like Rey from Nowhere, which is a big theme for this movie and that character. So, yeah, I really do love Kelly Marie Tran's performance, and I that's another character where it's like I walked out of that movie just being charmed by her, and it never would have crossed my mind that would have been evidently the quote unquote Jar Jar Binks of the sequel movies. You guys, what do you think?
No, I
she's nowhere near Jar Jar Binks.
Yes, she's nowhere near Jar Jar Binks. She's actually funny. She is pretty likable.
Do you understand why people hate her, though?
No, actually.
Yeah.
I was able to understand the whole Luke's grumpiness. I even understand like the whole race super powerful type of thing. But I don't understand Rose at all. Like the hate for Rose, I mean, it's weird.
Because she's a woman.
She's a woman of color, maybe. Oh, you know what it is? By the way, this is funny right here. That line that Maz Kanata just said, "Oh yeah, he can." Not all sexual references there in Star Wars. Take them when you can. There's a moment in Canto Bight where, to me, I think perfectly embodies why a certain kind of people don't like her. And I'll explain them when we get there. And here we are back on Octu. And, oh yes, the Force connection. Here we go. So, obviously a big thing that Ryan wanted to do was he needed to develop Reylo, basically. I mean, to just make it shorter. And they couldn't be in the same place. So this entire Force connection thing, we used to call it Force Skype, or Force Zoom now since we're in 2020. But this whole thing was invented for the sole purpose of developing characters, not for cool action-y throwing things back and forth stuff. And obviously a brand new concept that's never been seen in Star Wars before. And the intercutting of just Rey and Kylo. I remember, of course, with the whole sound design, you know, that's your clue that it's happening again. To me, that was just one of the more ingenious aspects of this film. How did you guys feel about the Force Zoom?
What'd you think?
I love it. I think it's, and like, I love that they're discovering it with us.
Right.
Like, they don't really know what's going on, and we don't really know what's going on, and it's like, what? They're just kind of like, what can I do? What can't I do? And it's, even if they're far apart, like, it helps with their development with each other so good, because it's like, they don't have like a whole conversation. They have like little snippets here and there of each other.
Right.
I love those things. I don't know what they are.
The caretakers. They're the caretakers of the Jedi Temple. They're funny. Also, one of the things, and I should have mentioned this earlier when we were talking about Hux, but one of the things that Ryan kept at the top of his mind is, even though it is the middle chapter, and even though there are going to be some slightly darker elements to the story and everything, like in Empire, he very much wanted to make sure there was plenty of room for humor throughout the film. I think Ryan values humor a lot. I think he's like a funny guy in a way, in terms of like, his affect and his personality. And I do think we needed those moments throughout the movie. And people forget this. People say that, Empire was the darkest movie, but they also forget that it was the funniest movie of the three. So I'll get back to that in a bit. This scene right here, and I said this to Peter, and I think we're in one of those weird moments where we kind of, the stars aligned and we agreed 100%. but it was like, when I said this to him, this may be my favorite scene in all of Star Wars. It may be my favorite scene because of the way that it portrays the Force. And talk about you guys.
It's also hilarious.
What? The rocks? What'd you say? What's hilarious?
This scene is also hilarious. Just because. Now reach out.
He's speaking to the people who think that the Force is a superpower. He's speaking to J.J. Abrams.
Oh, shit. Oh, shit. We're throwing a lot of shade. I'm not even sure if it's shade. It's just more directly insulting him, which, I mean, I'm fine by that.
This is J.J. Abrams.
Oh, God. Alexis, you made the scene better for me. No, but I just think it's one of the best scenes because it just perfectly portrays the Force as it always was envisioned. Like, just seeing it cut to the different parts of the island, the cold, the warm, we cut to the waves, we cut to the grass, the life, the death, the darkness. Like, that's really, in the tangent, that's what the Force is. Mm-hmm. And I think, to me, it's also just intriguing, the different elements that come into it. It's not just like resetting what the Force is, but, with Luke interjecting, whoever said that the light solely belonged to the Jedi? And his whole thing is, the Jedi were the reason why the light was snuffed out. Mm-hmm. there are many reasons to, really think of his point of view. And I think the concept that the movie really lands on is the Jedi should come out of, something else and not just what it's always been. The vanity of the Jedi is ultimately why they fell. Mm-hmm. And just, trusting in the Force and losing their compassion and not caring enough about anything but protecting the code and protecting their political public appearance and everything. Yeah. And becoming militarized and everything. So it's like, to me, what Luke was trying was to make a better Jedi Order with, leading with compassion, but then he saw it all burn to ashes. Mm-hmm. So like this Luke is, well, I tried, reforming the Jedi Order and it didn't work either. So I think the light needs to rise with a different kind of people, and the Jedi should just die.
Yeah, and it's like interesting to like talk about it because yes. And like that's why I love this movie, because it brings up those conversations about the Force, which is like, it's not what Star Wars is, but it's kind of like the baseline, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's like interesting also to like look back and yeah, like the Jedi were not the best of people, and in a way they were kind of like robots, because they didn't feel like that was like their thing. Like they were not allowed to like be in love. They tried so hard to be the middle ground, but like that wasn't it. Where like as you go to people who are on the dark side,
they led with passion.
Yeah, like their whole thing is they're angry. They have like all this anger built up that it kind of just explodes everywhere. So it's like really cool to, like I said, have this conversation about it.
I recall this sequence happening, and Kyle said that when we first saw it, that the Falcon has never been more of a dump than with the Porgs moving in. But to really add on to what you were saying, Alexis, yeah, like we just missed a moment there where Rey finds out that she didn't feel Luke, and that Luke literally cut himself off from the Force, which is ultimately why he had no idea Han died. Otherwise, he would have felt that, which I think a lot of us assumed when Force Awakens ended, and that distraught look in Luke's face at the end of the movie. A lot of us just assumed naturally that he was grieving over Han dying, but of course that wasn't the case. And that was also a great explanation of just to see how far Luke has gone to remove himself and detach himself from anything. And in some ways, the irony of what we're talking about right now, about how the Jedi detached themselves and became more robotic and like just didn't care, is ironically what Luke is doing in this movie by isolating himself. Even though he doesn't, that's not how he perceives it, but in some ways, it is him ultimately showing indifference. I mean, he thinks, of course, that he is saving the galaxy by allowing himself to be closed off, by allowing himself to die. So he has, I think, what would be better intentions, obviously. But in some ways, him just being gone isn't doing anybody any good either, which is ultimately why Yoda comes back to, like, knock his head in and, like, hey, get it together. Yeah. Basically. And another, there's so many controversial parts of this movie. Here we go, Canto Bite. Again, of the things that I thought people would have an issue with, really? A casino planet would set people off?
It's not a snow planet, that's why.
Oh yeah, it's not a... It's not a snow planet, it's not a desert planet, and it certainly isn't a jungle planet. So that might have been it, right?
They destroyed the jungle planet in the beginning.
Yeah, it was weird because I was also watching Director and the Jedi, which is the documentary of the making of this movie, and even the costume people that were working for Ryan were a little dubious at best about whether or not this. By the way, this. What I do love about the Star Wars movies, in almost every instance like this, these are huge sets that take months to make. Unlike the Marvel films, which most of the sets are VFX, this is real. Just about everything you're looking. So it's massive. But what I was saying is the costume people were also a bit dubious about whether or not what Ryan had asked for was going to feel like Star Wars, because Ryan didn't want this casino to be overly sci-fi. He wanted it to be elegant. He wanted it to be like filled with snooty rich people. And his intention was for it not to feel as alien. And I think there was some kind of a purpose for that in what you're going to see with Rose right here. And I think this is the reason why people hate Rose. It's because of what she says right there. People think that this scene is stopping the movie and lecturing them about, war profiteering. That's what people think that this scene is.
This is what they're fighting for.
Well, it's what they're fighting against, isn't it?
Against, yeah.
I mean, it was shoved in, though. That's the thing. For me, at least. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, we're getting this speech.
I don't think it was shoved in. I disagree with that entirely, and here's why. Because she's telling you where she comes from. She's telling you why it is she feels that way. And her impassioned moment here about, the kinds of dirty people around them and why she's in this fight is what inspires Finn to be in this fight more than just be in it for Rey. It's what inspires him to become a rebel and to stand for something. Which is ultimately what all of these people are doing, right? Like this resistance, this First Order, they're not just doing it because they hate each other. It's because they're standing for something. They're standing for a reason. And I think this whole idea that politics was being shoved in this movie misunderstands where Star Wars comes from, why Star Wars exists. Star Wars was created as a response to the Vietnam War and the mess that was causing in this country politically. This whole idea that war profiteering...
It's kind of funny if you think about it, and then if you think about Knives Out.
Yeah, and that wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for the trolls. So, thank you, trolls.
To me, I still didn't see it as I still see it as a shoved in lines. Maybe it could have been written better. I don't know, but to me, that wasn't really the part where he turns to the rebel side. I'll tell you I thought.
I don't think it's the part where he becomes a rebel. I think that scene lays the seeds to that. That he's beginning to understand, because in that entire sequence he's so mesmerized by the beauty and the panache, if you will, of like all of the damn elegance that's going on there. But when we go back at that scene and you look at how he reacts to Rose, he begins to see through the veneer and to look at things much differently than what this is funny right here, by the way. To what he previously thought of. And I think they're
just looking at her like, the fuck.
I love it.
But either way, you get okay. There's so many things I want to even get to, but you get where Rose comes from, and it also begins the arc for Finn, which I ultimately think, whether or not you agree, whether or not it was shoved in or not, how people don't recognize that Finn had a story arc in this movie blows my mind. I mean, it's there. And then also this line right here, at the height of their power, the Jedi allowed Darth Sidious to infiltrate the Republic and kill them. It was a Jedi who was responsible for the training of Darth Vader. Like, he is like spit and fire at the Jedi right here. Which all those things, regardless of your point of view, they're true, aren't they? They're very true. Yeah, this is, I think, the moment where you just are entranced by Mark Hamill's performance. Because by the time we get to the end of this explanation, he is breaking down in tears. And it honestly makes me sad how this industry didn't take advantage of Mark Hamill more of than just, you know, he's a prolific voice actor, and he's done things here and there, like on The Flash and Kingsman, but it's like, to me, the caliber of actor in Mark Hamill, I think, suggests so much more than the career he's had. He's had a great career, but certainly not the movie star that Harrison Ford ended up being. And you just think to yourself, look, I mean, look at this performance that we're seeing here by Mark Hamill, and it's like, I think Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, quite frankly, turn in their best performances in this final installment of the Star Wars franchise. This right here, and this is one of the most striking things, that you forget how into it these actors have to, you know, pull from to have like these breakdown moments for the characters. But I recall they filmed that scene where Luke, you know, got on his knees next to R2. They called cut, and there was a good like minute or two where like Ryan gave Mark like time to compose himself, and you forget like the things that these actors have to pull from personal tragedies to make themselves get this emotional. It's not something you can just turn on and off. Like, okay, camera's off, we can go to the next scene. Like, no, you forget, at least I forget, the toll it can take to bring up like horrible memories that you can use for acting moments.
I think I saw a clip of when it was when Daisy and Kylo like after they killed Snoke, and she's trying to convince him to like join her side. I think at some point he'll cut, and he's kind of like, and Ryan is kind of talking to Daisy like in a low voice, trying to like get her comfortable, because she's also like had to like be pretty emotional during that scene. And you can't just be like, great job, good job. No, it's just kind of like, hey, that was good. Nice job. He
was also talking about other scenes. So remember earlier in the film, Adam Driver is in the TIE Fighter, and he's about to kill, or not kill, Carrie Fisher. Because it's such a confined space, Ryan basically talks to Adam Driver through a microphone. He's not like, he can't be in that space, obviously. So it takes a lot to get these performances. But to me, one of the things that I feel is highly underappreciated in big commercial movies, like we just did Infinity War and Endgame, right? And then even here with Last Jedi. These performances are great performances. I mean, regardless of what genre of movie you're in. And I don't think that if the performances weren't as good, I don't think the films would be anywhere near as good. Because the performances, aside from the writing and the direction, are a big part of selling the character. You know, it kind of all has to click, and if it doesn't, there's a problem. And then here comes DJ, Benicio del Toro. Ryan said that he wanted to introduce a character that was a smuggler, pirate, kind of like in the vein of Han Solo and Lando Calrissian, but what he wanted to do was, as he wanted to subvert expectations. He wanted to remind people that just because in the past we've seen examples of scoundrels that ended up being heroes. That ain't the case for every single one of them. And that's kind of the point, is also clearly to stir the development for Finn. Because, you know, here we have DJ, who is, you know, a rogue agent, basically, you know, for hire, pirate, whatever you want, who is just indifferent to who wins and loses this war, because it's all the same. Because the point of Canto Bight and the point of all those people we just saw, they don't care who wins or loses the fucking war, because they're making money off both sides. And depending on who wins, they're going to be just fine. So that's kind of what, in a different aspect, what DJ embodies. And Finn, who this entire time has not necessarily identified with being a rebel, more with, you know, being compassionate and befriending Rey, and that's kind of was his whole thing. DJ, and being this, you know, unambiguous, you know, or this ambiguous, like, freelancer who doesn't believe in anything, is there to show Finn what he could become and not care about anything.
And that was this part where I thought that's where he completely turned to the rebel side. Because that's what I thought from the beginning too, is that he saw DJ being like, hey, who cares about this war? And I was like, oh.
That's who he could grow into.
Yes. Also, this scene, I said it in our review. The plan wasn't to free the fathiers, for God's sake. Oh my God. They're like... They were literally
things
stuck
that
in
people bitch, whine, and moan about. Oh my God.
The plan wasn't to free the fathiers. And they say this like, why would you free the fathiers? Why wouldn't you just free the slave kids? And I'm like, take them where? They were, you know, those guards right there, they were willing to shoot down. They were about to like shoot down their ship. Someone could have been in there and they probably wouldn't have cared. So those kids would have been killed during this scene here.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear the fathiers were used to escape. Not
they were just a distraction. And
right,
you know, and when hold on, with the kids. Oh, actually, I like this music right here. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's one of the original themes from the movie. Yeah, Williams is great.
Also, the kids, you know, they're like, why didn't they just take them to another planet? For one thing, I think they only had like 10 minutes left or something to help out the crew.
Right.
Like by the time they get to the ship, it was like 5 or 10 minutes or something. So they wouldn't have had time to be like, okay, what's the nearest habitable planet? Okay, bye kids. You know, like, what the fuck?
There's so many things, again, that just make me feel so brain dead about the things that people didn't like in what we're seeing right now. Okay, so number one, you're complaining that animals were freed partly because you think that this movie is going so political that this movie is now advocating for animals' rights, and you hate that. Not because you don't like animals' rights, but because why is the movie advocating for animals' rights? It's not. So, shut up. That's not what happens in this. And there was also another weird complaint that this entire, like, with the fathiers escaping and tearing through the town, which ultimately is a great character thing for Rose, because that's exactly what she wanted to do, but okay. Some people labeled it as, oh, it felt too much like Harry Potter. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? It felt like Harry Potter. Like, you're the Potterhead, Moreno. Can you tell me what about that felt like Harry Potter?
I guess that scene
the adventure sense type of thing, like maybe I don't know.
I mean, you mentioned Potter, and my first thought was the Prisoner of Azkaban. You know, when he flies.
When he frees the bird.
Well, when he flies it for the first time, kind of like that. But I mean, that can be anything from any sci-fi or. I mean, I could say, oh, it's too much like Pixar, and I could be talking about the Wall-E scene when he's like holding onto the ship, and you know he sees the stars.
Yeah.
Also, right here, how do you know those fathers are able to be habitable in this planet? And it's kind of like they're gonna get caught. You literally see them getting chased. By the way. Again, that wasn't part of the plan. It was just a coincidence that they happened to destroy this whole thing.
None of this matters.
Yeah.
None of this matters. What? Okay. So here we have Luke reconnecting himself into the Force, and we have a wonderful moment where he makes a Force connection with Leia, who is unconscious at this time. And then we cut to Rey and Kylo, and we're about to see the sequence where Kylo tells Rey the true story. Yeah, I should note that in any instance, and especially the first instance when I viewed the film, you had to understand, and I think maybe I speak for all of us, because I recall how excited we all were, walking out of it initially. But at this point, I was so invested in this movie, in practically every single aspect of it. Like, it didn't even occur to... Yeah, here's the yeah, whatever that is. But it didn't occur to me in any sense people would have such huge issues, because I just thought it was a brilliant film in almost every aspect, and the more that I watch it, the more I realize just how expertly crafted it was and where it came from, and the amount of issues that we just spent discussing when we got to a point where people were complaining about, well, how do you know the Fathers were habitable on that planet? And I'm like, do you hear yourself right now?
This is like nitpicking, like to a T. Like, if that's what you're complaining about, then
this movie is lost on you. I mean, I just feel that in every sense. And then, of course, that naturally bridges us to a point where people also hate the fact that... This is
such a cool scene, though. Like,
it is. You get to see Luke's old lightsaber, too. So the idea that Luke tried to kill Kylo Ren was one of those instances that was, by many Star Wars fans, a betrayal of what they thought Luke to be. David, talk about that.
No, I mean, again, I understand you don't want to see your hero do something that horrible.
Murder?
Murder, really. Like an innocent child. So, I understand, that's not my hero, that's not my Luke, whatever. But, I mean, they explained, though, like, he was starting something new. People were expecting so much from him. And it kind of just got on his head. And
he saw the darkness, basically. And he saw a way to prevent it.
Which is understandable.
Yeah, again, you don't have to be like, oh, I forgive him, that. No, hate him for it. Hate Rian Johnson
he hates himself for doing it.
Yeah, he hates himself for doing it. Yeah, again, I don't mind this, but
like,
hate Rian Johnson for
justify
that, for like writing that. But just kind of understand it from his point, at least from Luke's.
But even the way that Ryan writes it, like, Luke himself can't justify what he did, which is why he lies to Rey, because he's shamed.
Mm-hmm.
He's ashamed of even thinking that he didn't do anything, but he almost did, and it was a thought that went through his head, and like Jesus
because of
Christ.
everything that he had gone through, everything that he was going through. Like, it makes sense. Like I keep saying, like, he's a human being. Like, we all, like, at some point, you know, me and him get in fights. You know, I'm obviously not gonna kill him, but we still get in fights. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so stupid for people to be complaining about this when it's like, you are, like, people just have to accept the fact that this is what Luke is now, and it makes sense. It makes sense to where he is now, because, yeah, like, it's nobody is going to be perfect and live up to that their whole lives, you know what I mean?
No
like,
one is going to be the same person their whole lives.
Yeah.
We grow, we change. And the last time we saw Luke, he was what, 20-something? Now he's in his mid-60s? You don't think he's gone through things that have changed him? I mean, check back in on us when we're in our mid-60s. God willing, we live to be in our mid-60s considering how things are going. But I mean...
Even like 2 years ago, we're not the same people that we were.
No. A lot of our thoughts are different now. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, one of the examples that I bring up is... Moreno, when you and I did the first Star Wars commentary with Peter and Kyle on The Force Awakens, our thoughts on what we liked about that movie have, in almost every instance, drastically changed since then. And what we wanted out of Episode 8, out of Episode 9, Peter was like, in that commentary, you know, to speak to what we're seeing right now, he was adamant that it would be lame that if Rey was a nobody, that Rey had to be connected to some kind of lineage, which is what we're seeing right here with the, you know, the allegory of the cave sequence. And I think it brings us to Rey overall, in that the easiest thing, and this is what Ryan says, the easiest thing for Rey to hear when she goes to Luke is that connection, that they're related, or that, you know, the thing that Kylo says, what you look for in Han Solo, what you look for in Luke Skywalker, she is missing that sense of identity. She's missing that sense of belonging, and she's trying to look for it anywhere that she can. And the easiest thing for her to hear is, you know, for Luke to be the mentor, to be the master, to be Yoda. But the hardest thing is the complete opposite, which is what happens with Luke, and how, you know, in many ways, he pushes her away and he rejects her. And she has to find out for herself who she is. Even in this instance, where she, you know, the Force is trying to tell her in some way that her parents are not out there. And she has to find out for herself who she is.
Yeah. And it's so, like, that's not how life works. Like, you can't depend on other people to be happy. Like, you have to do it for yourself. Mm-hmm. And this is, like, what's happening with Rey, although it completely changes later on.
I mean, it happened to Luke. I mean, and you see how he's paying for it in this movie, but, you know, once upon a time that he was handed a fairy tale, basically. And you see the you know, the impact of that right now, and ultimately where it led him to. But that's... I think, I don't know, I just feel like, what would be the point of this trilogy if Rey was basically just Luke 2.0? If Luke was Yoda 2.0? If Kylo was Vader 2.0? What would be the point of any of this?
We already saw that story. We don't need it again.
Exactly. Yes.
Also, this scene, Rey doesn't win.
I know, right?
She pulls
People
a gun
bitch.
out to, a fist fight, okay? That's all it was. She didn't win.
And I think they think that because, like, Luke fell. Well, I mean, I think there's rain. Luke slipped, and he used the Force to catch himself and then some. Like, he was fine. Yeah. And also, like, she's younger and more flexible and agile. She'll have moments where she can get the best of him, but ultimately...
No, but again, she pulls out the lightsaber.
Yeah,
He's weaponless. Right. I think if he did have a weapon, with that part right there where he, like, stopped himself from falling using the Force, I think he would have pushed himself up and, like, used the lightsaber to, I don't know, disarm her.
Yeah, but people already had an idea about Rey being this Mary Sue, which, by the way, I want to remind the masses out there, the term Mary Sue, or practically labeling Rey a Mary Sue, came from Max Landis on an infamous appearance on the Screen Junkies Movie Fights series. By the way, Max Landis has since been, accused of sexual assault and harassment, so there you go. That's where you get your damn labeling of Mary Sue from, but he's the one that started it, because that happened the week after Force Awakens came out, and he called her a Mary Sue, and the whole internet joined in and called, Rey, this person who's just naturally talented and can do anything and anything, and like she's not an interesting character. And the way that this was filmed, it didn't help that, but at the same time, I always just pushed back against those things, because, if we're gonna have to go over that again, and I guess we are, Rey is somebody who grew up hearing the legends and the tales, which is why she's somewhat familiar with the Force, although not really clear about what it is when she asks Luke in this movie, but what is it really? She just knows the legend of it, which, as we know, mythology can be, farthest thing away from what reality is. And we know that, as a scavenger defending herself and growing up, like, in her, being Force sensitive of all things, like, to me, this whole issue of her being this boring, interesting character that can't do anything, that can do everything, completely misses the fact that she comes from no lineage, and the fact that anybody can be what she is kind of the point that they're not seeing with her character and this movie. Frank Oz, everybody. Yoda, who, by the way, yes, Frank Oz puppeteered Yoda himself. Practically all of the same things they did for Empire Strikes Back. Even the original mold in which the original Yoda puppet was made, they found that and they remade this new puppet. The lady who painted Yoda's eyes for Empire Strikes Back is still working in the business today, and they found her to paint Yoda's eyes again for this puppet. The moment in Director and the Jedi where Rian Johnson and Mark Hamill walk in to see the set with Frank Oz to rehearse the scene is so emotional to me, because you see how emotional Mark Hamill got, like, when he says it's really getting to me. Yeah. Just like seeing the puppet there in Frank Oz. And we're going to mention Mark Hamill later on with him not agreeing with this character, which is fine. But as far as this sequence is concerned, I could think of no better use for Yoda than right here. And Yoda coming right back and teaching Luke the exact same lessons that he was trying to teach Luke way back in Empire Strikes Back. It's almost like poetry. It rhymes.
Why didn't he like where his story was going?
It's the same thing. He thought it went against his character. He didn't like that he almost killed his
Has he admitted to changing his mind?
No.
Well, it's inconsistent. I'll get to that later on. But I want to focus real quick on Yoda, though. What were you guys thinking when you saw this scene?
Oh, it's so great. Yoda, he spits out the greatest wisdom ever, and this is just another great scene right here.
One of the most emotional in the movie.
Yes, one of the most emotional.
And it also, telegraphs one of the biggest lessons, right? Failure, the greatest teacher is.
Some people disagree with that, believe it or not.
Really?
Yes.
Failure, folly, but failure most of all. The greatest teacher failure is. I mean, that's true, though. I mean, how many times have all of us fucked up in some sense, but then the next time we remember how badly we fucked up, and then we find out ways to not fuck up as bad. I mean, that's just a lesson of life. To get to Mark Hamill, Alexis, Mark Hamill basically says it in the documentary in many clips that he just didn't agree that was the Luke Skywalker that he remembered that he wanted to play again. What Mark Hamill was expecting when he signed up again was that he was going to be the Obi-Wan of this trilogy. And I think part of him was just disappointed that it wasn't the same as it was, with Carrie and with Harrison, and not being, because, it's a different experience again for the actors, right? Because them shooting together, and, there was never a single instance where Harrison Ford or Carrie Fisher or Mark Hamill were shooting anything together.
So it was more like nostalgia rather than like the character itself.
Right, it's like you're competing with the glory days in a sense. From Mark Hamill's perspective. But Mark says, during the filming of the movie, he just didn't understand, he didn't agree the direction that Ryan was taking this in at all. However, like the professional that he is, he basically said this to Ryan on day one. I don't like what you're doing to my character, but having said that, I'm going to do everything I can to give you the best performance that I can do. He didn't like what his character was going to be, but him being the actor, he being the professional that he is, turned in an outstanding performance.
And I guess it makes sense like that he didn't like it, because it's like you look up to this person your whole life. It's kind of what everybody was feeling too, that he fucked up, like he didn't turn out to be this like godly person. Right.
He even says himself that, look, I'm the janitor, basically. They loan it out to me, but it's not my place to decide what the character becomes. It's my place to be the conduit for that character. And I remember listening to clips of Mark saying that when the movie was being released, that when he saw the final piece of it, he wasn't like all of a sudden like, oh yeah, I agree with what you did, but he was much more understanding of how it was, because Rian Johnson's vision was much more clear with him. Because remember, the actors, they don't know all the movie, and they don't see the final piece until the premiere. So I think he was much more understanding and very respectful of Ryan, very much so. But it's also a stretch to say that he was entirely at peace with what happened. I think part of him was just very disappointed that it just wasn't what he expected, which, I think we can all relate to experiences like those. Oh yeah, and this, David, talk about this, because this is a different issue, right? Talk about people's complaints of why didn't Holdo just tell Poe the plan?
When I first saw it, I actually assumed that she didn't have a plan.
It looks that way.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And I thought she was feeling the transports just because, you know what, we might have to abandon ship and we're just going to have to scatter. That could have been the plan. Which, yeah, bad plan, but what else can they do? I don't know about what people say that, she's in charge, she doesn't have to tell everyone the plan and all that. I don't know about that. It's hard to say for me. But for me at the time, she didn't really have a plan. She was just preparing for whatever's going to happen.
I understand that here comes this guy, being all up in her face, and she's like, who are you? You need to calm your shit.
Yeah, and it's not like, not everyone in that ship is kind of like,
is purviewed to being aware of what that plan should be.
Not everyone is on the side of Poe, though.
Right, obviously.
There was only 3-4 people
that were pointing guns at her. Yeah.
And then everyone else was just kind of like, you know what, no one else did anything. And I think everyone was just kind of like, you know what, she's in charge, let's just do her thing. And people who took Poe's side, it was just kind of like, we know him, we respect him.
But I think people misunderstand, though. It's not as if she didn't tell anyone. She didn't tell him specifically what the plan would be. And there's a story reason for that. Leia demoted Poe because Poe disobeyed orders. Mm-hmm. Poe decided that, the superior's plan didn't fit in with his sensibilities, so he went against it and he defied orders. I mean, there's a reason why Holdo didn't tell Poe, because she knew that if she did, he would fuck it up in some way. Right? Like, that's what happens. So, and also, again, it's just a stupid complaint, because that's not what the movie is going. Like, you think you're missing what the movie is going for if you're complaining about things like that. Poe's mutiny, Finn and Rose's like infiltration, and then Rey's hope to turn Kylo, they all miserably fail. And what did Yoda just say? The greatest teacher failure is. If people were complaining that these plans were half-baked, stupid, and ultimately were fruitless, yeah, you're right. That was kind of the point, genius. Was for them to fail. Was for them to lose at this point. Right? Like, oh
also,
my God.
right here, like you said, Poe disobeys Leia's orders. He tells her his plan. She's against it. Could have been the same thing. Oh my God, I love this. It's so hilarious.
They got a lot of laughs in the theaters. I mean, that's just, I think, a signature Ryan, just like, isn't that funny?
It was good. Also, I saw an interview with Benicio del Toro, and part of the reason why he added a stutter with his character is because he thought, you know what, my character seems kind of perfect. Like, I can hack through anything. He's literally like the perfect person for the job and all that.
Right.
And so he kind of want to add something that's imperfect with his character.
A little bit of a defect, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I like the stutter. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the whole thing here is just a perfect mirroring to what, so Rey is just so convinced herself that she can be the Luke here. She can be the Luke that turns Darth Vader, betrays the Emperor, and saves the galaxy. And they're literally like playing that almost in a play-by-play of what happened in episode 6. But of course, it doesn't go that way, and the movie is better for it. Go figure.
Also, to people who thought, the people who thought he was actually going to turn to the good side, I'm excluding Rise of Skywalker here, by the way. We're not. This is our thoughts before Rise of Skywalker came out. You know what? Right. I don't want to put Rise of Skywalker in my head canon. So. Anyways, yeah. People who said that Kylo was going to turn good here. No. She literally called him a monster, and he's like, yeah, I am. And just, it was never a guarantee that, like, oh, you know what? I killed my master for you so that I can be good and go back to my mom. Like, you seriously think he's going to go back to his mom after what he did with Han? And so, yeah. I found it ridiculous. Some people thought of that.
Yeah, but how many times have we used that word today? Ridiculous. Which is pretty much summing up a lot of, the reasonings for why people don't like the movie, or a lot of the things that happen in the movie. Yeah, 3PO gets some nice moments throughout the movie, to be, live up to, comedic relief. Ryan was talking about how he and Anthony Daniels on the set would just, like, come up with ways to insert 3PO, and use them for the best kind of comedy. And, he gets a really bad situation for 3PO is that he gets caught in this mutiny of sorts. So that part where, Poe is like, 3PO, where are you going? Right now when we get to that, right here. Oh gosh.
That's
Yeah.
so good.
It's funny, yeah.
I like this part.
Oh.
Just look at him like, oh shoot, but then, and then, oh my gosh, what's her name? Captain Phasma.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I think she was used worse than Rose in Rise of Skywalker, just because
And
they
Rise
were
of Skywalker.
like how the way they used her in these movies, like I found it worse than how they treated Rose in Rise of Skywalker, because they were hyping her up to be like the next what is it, Boba Fett and all that, but she literally comes out in both movies for like 5 minutes, and poor for the actress.
That's like Boba Fett.
No, it doesn't matter. You hyping her up to be like this badass character and you do nothing. That's fucked up. It doesn't matter.
I understand what you're saying.
I'd also just feel bad for the actress though, because like if you see interviews of her, they're again like they're saying like, oh, what's it like to be in the Star Wars movie? You're supposed to be this character and that, and she's just like spitting out answers.
I mean, ultimately, I'm sure, if you're Gwendolyn Christie, you might have hoped for a bigger role than what you got, right? Mm-hmm. In Star Wars. I ultimately was very much indifferent about Phasma, one way or the other. Like, I understand if you have issues with how she was used. I ultimately don't really care for her, so that would indicate that there were issues in how she was used, and she is a cool design. But it's like, to me, I never really take anything seriously as far as marketing is concerned. They hype her up as they hyped up the Sith Troopers, or they hyped up the Knights of Ren.
The Knights of Ren.
Ultimately, they were just useless, background people, but they were always going to be, because how many times in Star Wars movies have there been useless background people who are only used for marketing purposes? To me, I didn't expect anything more than what we got. It sounds like that's not what you thought in terms of the hype for Phasma, and I understand the disappointment because of it.
No, I mean, if they didn't hype her up or anything, if she was just like, she just happened to be in the trailers.
But they hyped her up for money. That's the only reason.
That really is the big thing that bothers me. It's like they were hyping her up so much and nothing. It's like how Disney does that whole first openly gay character and all that.
Right, a little bit.
It's just
annoying.
Like that.
We're going to do my favorite part in this movie.
I wanted to mention the scene that we just saw with Leia and with Holdo. Ryan mentioned that Laura Dern, had brought up that she wanted to have a scene with Carrie, to pay tribute to Carrie Fisher. In the character of Leia. Again, this is before she passed away, clearly. But that whole sequence where like Holdo and Leia were like, bidding, farewell to each other was very much, you taught me how. May the Force be with you. Was just a nice, ode to, the legacy of the character of Leia. And one of the subtle touches that I loved in that sequence when, 3PO and Leia are about to board their transport, and Holdo signals that she's not going to be joining them. I love just the subtle touch of 3PO in the background just being stunned and saddened by Holdo, not going with them, and then him like walking back and everything. So in that one scene with Carrie Fisher and with Laura Dern, you felt the long history that was their friendship, because Holdo has been friends with Leia for their entire life. They grew up together on Alderaan. And I think it was in the novel Princess Leia, one of the newer canon novels that was released, where there's more of her, more of them together. So, and again, you just feel for Leia because too many losses. I mean, she just lost her husband. She just lost so many people. Now she's lost Akbar. Now she's losing her lifelong best friend. Like, Jesus fuck. Like, Leia gets put through the ringer. Like, I mean, we talked about Thor, literally losing everybody. And the only thing that Leia has left is Poe. And one of the things that I loved in this movie was, yes, there's almost like a symbolic handing of the baton from Leia to Poe, and Leia showing Poe how to lead. But there's you get the sense in the actors' performances that there's something just maybe more meaningful. Like Leia lost her son, and she never got Ben back. But you do get like this almost motherly mother-son almost dynamic between Leia and Poe in a lot of this movie. Like that's like mainly in how proud she is at the end of the movie to see how much he's grown in such little amount of time, when she says, "What are you looking at me for? Follow him." What they did with her and then her relationship with Poe just made me like Poe all that much more. You guys there?
Yeah.
Okay, just watching the movie, right?
Yeah,
it's a great film.
I was watching the movie. When you mentioned that Leia lost her son, I just remembered something. Part of the reason why I was okay with why I understood what Luke did with Kylo. The slap. That was funny.
Yeah, it was funny.
Is because people say, "Oh, he wasn't willing to kill his dad and all that." The thing is, though, it wasn't out to me when I saw Return of the Jedi. It wasn't because he's the hero, he's a good person. It's because the Force technically told him that Darth Vader was good. When he was talking to Leia about like, I can turn him good, she's kind of like, "Are you insane? He's evil," and he just goes like, "No, I can feel it. He's good." And so when he kind of like goes up to Ben and believes that he could turn evil, again, it's because of the Force telling him that this can't happen. And yeah, I get it. He's your hero. You want him to be hopeful that he can turn him to the light side and all that. But the thing is, though, Leia saw darkness in him. Luke saw it. And then towards the end, when Luke faces Kylo, she says, she openly admits, "No, yeah, my son's lost.
I don't want a son who's gone."
Yeah. So I never really saw it as him being this hopeless character. It was just kind of like, no, yeah, the Force told him he was gonna be bad, and he had a moment of weakness.
Right here, we're gonna come back here to Finn and Rose, and there is a line by Benicio del Toro. The last thing that DJ says when he walks away from them is, "Maybe." That was an improvised line from Benicio del Toro, and ultimately one that Ryan was much more pleased with, because I think it just spoke to the indifference, the complete indifference of who DJ's, who DJ is, whether or not these people he just betrayed die or not, or what end up happens. And I guess and you saw the dichotomy right there, because Finn was so outraged, was so outraged that he was betrayed by DJ when really he shouldn't have been. And just like the complete indifference when DJ says maybe, and then just walks away, is ultimately, what begins to trigger Finn in deciding who it is who he's going to be. Oh, are we here already?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I just realized. Here we are. By the way, before we lose him, Andy Serkis is such an underappreciated treasure.
Oh, yeah.
And I hate that he keeps getting killed off, because he plays great villains. And he brought this ferocity to Snoke's performance. That I like Snoke. And again, I don't consider episode 9 to exist, so this is where it ends. It's nothing else happening here. Also, okay, I guess I have to go and... Okay, I'm going to break it open again. this idea that Palpatine was Snoke the entire time is stupid, because didn't we just see right now? I mean, what we're seeing right now doesn't make any sense. He's, he was just about to kill Rey.
I don't know.
Like, if Snoke is an agent of Palpatine, why would he order Kylo Ren to kill Rey, who is a descendant?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It makes no sense. Just ignore the last.
No, just ignore it.
But
Ignore
this
it.
scene, oh my goodness! This whole. Every time I rewatch this movie, like, I watch the scene over and over again because I love it so much.
Simply one of the most exciting moments in all of my life when it comes to watching movies, right?
Yes.
Just like the music builds up. I mean, they just killed off the bad guy, and then here we have, light and dark joining forces. And in the sequence that was so inspired by, I think Ryan said that he was inspired by the old movies of Jackie Chan and Jet Li when it came to like orchestrating this scene. And again, this is just all the powers of a brilliant artiste coming together, right? You have the actors, you have the writing, and you also just have the beautiful sets, the choreography and everything.
Also, yes, here.
And fire.
Huge editing problem.
Where?
You'll see it.
When?
I'll point it out. Also, people saying like, "Oh, Rey did better than Kylo." Kylo's facing 3 people right here at the same time.
She like almost got killed 2 seconds ago. She got cut.
Yeah, and Kylo didn't get anything.
I love him.
See, right here, he's facing 3 people. Like, how do you expect him? Oh my god.
It's almost as if people are looking for things to complain about.
She has no like sense of like what to do with it type of thing, whereas he's like, yes, I need to do this, this is this and this.
I love this oh shit moment that's gonna happen.
Oh, well, this guy had 2 swords, and literally right when he had her on the headlock, it just disappears.
Oh.
So she literally wins by an editing error, by the way. Like,
oh. Okay.
Yeah, it's a really big mistake in this movie, but I
didn't see it.
Yeah.
I'm too distracted by what's going on to even notice it. I guess I noticed it right now, but okay.
Yeah.
The moment where they kill that last Praetorian guard with basically a lightsaber to the eye. I love the reaction. Some of the great audience reactions we got in this movie was one of those. Yeah, like at this point, after this sequence concluded, I was so on cloud 9, just thinking, wow, this thing is amazing. And it's almost as if the movie gets better and better and better as it keeps going and going and going.
I watched this movie with my old roommate who had never seen a Star Wars movie, and this like whole scene, she was like, oh my god, like she was like holding her breath in the whole time.
Which I think also shows you that for all the people who say, with Marvel movies or Star Wars movies, you kind of have to watch all of them to get invested. I think throughout the commentaries that we've been doing, I think we can put that to bed, right? Like that's no. I mean, a good movie is a good movie.
Yeah.
And the fact that your roommate never seen a Star Wars before, and then she was as invested as what was going to happen right here. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and then even in the next scene, like the big explosion scene, she was just like when that was like also one of my favorite moments in the movie theater, when it was just like silent after that moment, and all you can hear is her like
Yeah. I actually heard that the same thing happened was I heard this on another podcast where someone took their friend to see Rise of Skywalker who had never seen The Last Jedi or any other Star Wars type of thing, and she actually enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a good movie, Rise of Skywalker, but you can still find enjoyment in these movies.
Yeah, like one of my coworkers, she is not like super invested in these movies. Like she had seen some of the movies and stuff, but like she like hardly knows who these people are and stuff. And she went to go see Rise of Skywalker, and she really liked the movie. And like it's understandable because it's practically based off of the old movies.
I mean, if you've never seen a Star Wars before and you saw that one, I mean, I feel like a lot of us who don't like that one bring a lot of the older movies and we know them, and that's why we didn't like it as much and everything.
Like, wait, what do you mean?
I'm saying that, so you're saying that your coworker was not invested in these movies and doesn't really know them all that much, but she enjoyed that last one. Well, one of the reasons why, that last movie was such a blow to all of us is because it practically copied and or portrayed all of what came before, which we know by heart. So different experiences by what you've seen. Shall we talk about this Haldo maneuver?
Oh, it's so great.
What a moment.
It's
just
it's the most anime scene in any Star Wars movie. That was my favorite comparison.
The shot after, oh man, it's so good. Like, I wish I could watch this movie in the theater again just for this scene.
Yes. It's just, and big props to the VFX department. Look at how, I don't even know what word to use. Just look at how gorgeous that is. How sublime. And then, of course, the sound design. I remember they put up a sign at the theater, warning people that this is part of the movie, and the theaters and the speakers didn't break because it cut to silence and everything. Look at that.
When the ships start getting blown up when they're going to the planet, to people that complain about this movie, it wasn't Holdo's fault that those ships were getting blown up. Like, people literally blame Holdo that she sent them to their deaths right there.
Technically that's Poe's fault.
Yes, it is Poe's fault.
Yeah, because he sent Finn and Rose off on this mission, which made them end up on the damn Star Destroyer. Like, if Poe literally did nothing, nobody would have died. Who was on that last cruiser, and more of them would have quietly have gone to the crate base, and that was it. But yeah, all this kind of happens because Poe was like, fuck you, Haldo. I do like this though. For how little I care about Phasma, I do like this fight. And that Finn gets a moment here.
Yeah, Finn. It's really just because of Finn. He gets a pretty badass moment here.
Right. And this is the point where it's like, okay, it's rebel scum, bitch. I'm a rebel. Deal with it. And God, it's just, I'm sorry if it's just we're too obsessed with the movie, but like, I literally am in love with every frame of this movie in almost every single aspect. Like, I just, from Phasma's staff or the gun or the explosions and then just this bam right here, like, there's like almost nothing in this movie that doesn't work for me. And just to be clear, that's the opposite of saying nothing in this movie works for me, which is to say, just about everything in this movie really, really works for me. I'm honestly just in awe that this was made and in this way, because, oh my God, it's just so unfair. It really is, that the response to this movie was just what it was. Also, I love the moments they give BB-8 here. Oh my God, look at that. That looks beautiful.
Wait, was it them?
Yeah, that was them.
Oh, okay.
It was either them or it was Ray. I don't know. I one of the two, because she has to get off. She uses Snoke's private cruiser to get off that, and then she contacts Chewie, who... This is the funny thing. So if you go to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, because it takes place at the time of The Last Jedi, Smuggler's Run, which is the Millennium Falcon attraction, is literally based off the time that Chewie drops this off to Hondo Ohnaka after he drops Rey off at the Star Destroyer. I know, right? And like we're and the whole point of Smuggler's Run is to go and get a shipment for Hondo and then give it back in Chewie in time so that Chewie can go back and, and meet up with Rey and everything. So
that's weird.
I mean, yeah, but it's I mean, it's weird that Hondo is even alive. I mean, I don't know how old they live. I mean, his species lives, but I mean. Yeah. Hondo's old by the time Rebels happens. I mean, this is 30 years after Rebels. Star Wars Rebels, I mean, the animated series, not Rebels as in... You know what I mean.
Yeah.
This shot. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Oh, Jesus Christ. I know everybody thought that this was going to be a snow planet. It has a similar aesthetic. But, one thing that we should mention is, I know it was not so slyly brought up before by Moreno about, hey, we have different kinds of planets in this movie, yay. But we also have different kinds of creatures. I love these crystal foxes. I love the porgs. I love the fathiers, and I really like the sea cow that Luke uses to get milk out of, which you can now get at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, or whenever it opens. I love that delivery. And then, of course, the thing that he cares about most is the fucking droid.
Where's my droid?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rose, I felt that reaction. Is this all that's left? Yeah. It's honestly, to me, what made this so exciting as the movie progresses is just how dwindled, the resistance has been reduced to. Like, we've never seen this before. Like, I mean, the rebellion has always been a ragtag group of people, but they've had, armed forces of some sort. This is them at their lowest moment. And, to me, by the time we're at this point of the movie, especially in my first instance viewing it, I was at a point where, like, I don't know how this movie ends. And I honestly am scared for them because I don't know how they get out of this shit. Like, they're in a hopeless situation. Of course, we have to have some kind of obligatory mention to Death Star technology. But okay, I'll allow it. It's not as if the next movie was going to do a oh.
I love those crystal foxes. It looks so cool.
I want one of those. Can you get me one of those? I'm sure, yeah.
Oh, that scene I forgot to mention where you see like Luke's daily life, milking those space cows and fishing.
The sea cows, yeah.
Some people thought it was kind of pointless. I mean, maybe it could have been cut short. I don't know. But I feel like if it wasn't there, people would have been questioning, like, how has he been surviving all this time?
There would have been a stupid question regardless.
Yeah.
If it's not a stupid complaint, it's a stupid question. I think that much we've learned, right, in this commentary. It's one or the other. I wanted to comment, by the way, this actor we're about to see recently passed away due to COVID-19.
Oh.
Yeah, this was, I have his name right here, Andrew Jack. He was in The Force Awakens, and I think he also might have been in Rise of Skywalker, but we just saw him right here. Tragically passed away at the age of 76 last week as of the date of this recording due to COVID-19 or complications to COVID-19. So wanted to go ahead and pay respects to and to mention that, considering that's what's going on in the world right now as we record this commentary. That moment I wanted to mention before, where they hear the Death Star tech being started up and everybody in the base is just like, you get this sense of dread, and like for the first time you see everybody in the rebellion just like, we're gonna fucking die.
Yeah.
And then Finn, who's on this journey of like, is on the beginning of his rebellion journey, like, come on, to light the spark, if you will. And I love the score here that they used for the rebellion, and I think it's also a great moment. I mean, because a lot of people died, Rose is one of those people that has to step up, and like here she is, even though she's not one of the main characters, she's grown to the point where she's now on the front lines, from behind the scenes in the gutters to the front lines, and here she is in memory of her sister, stepping up to be a hero, a rebel. And again, it's a great side by side in terms of these beat up old clanky things that they're using to fight with. Like, that's basically the rebellion right there.
I just love the way that he used the land, really.
Yes.
The red dust, and it's so good.
Like, we see it happen so many times, just the salt and everything, and by any movement, the color that it creates, that it almost makes you feel stupid how we didn't realize Luke was a projection when that happens, because we see it a lot. I love the porg. It's funny to me. Cool.
Alexis.
I like Kylo's reaction though.
Oh my god, yes. I love Finn's reaction too. It's like, oh man, they hate that shit.
Yeah.
And also, they give Chewie's big moment in the movie. He's basically piloting the Falcon by himself. Like, you need two people to do that, to do it well, and here Chewie is, and he has to outmaneuver them. And another great use of crate. Isn't this just beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just the crystals, the red crystals, or they're crystals, right?
I was so excited when they included this in Star Tours.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't been, but yeah, that's great that they included this part here. Look at that.
One thing that I liked about the new sequel trilogy, is just the way they show how they showed the Millennium Falcon fly. I feel like it's really different from the original. Just kind of like seems more smooth and almost. I like the way it kind of twirls around in like places. It looked really pretty to me how it flew.
It's more than just swerving to the left, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna outmaneuver them, swerving to the left. That's one of the jokes from the first movie. It's what they could do with it in A New Hope. And then this moment right here, Ryan intentionally was like, if I could get Hux is hilarious, just trying to one up Ren here, but Ryan Johnson, if it was saying that if I could make you just for a second actually believe that Finn was going to sacrifice himself, then that I've done a good job. And we're seeing here the intersection of of character arcs. We see Poe having learned from earlier in the movie where he knows that this is not going to result in a victory. It's only going to result in more dead people, so he calls it off. And then we also have Finn, who's basically now where Poe was at the beginning of the movie. And now he's going to make the sacrifice play. And like I remember sitting in the theater just thinking, "Oh my god, we're gonna lose John Boyega." Like I was convinced. How do you guys think?
I still think it should have happened.
Yeah.
Nothing against John Boyega or the character. It's just
It's okay. There's no movie after this. It doesn't.
I think it would have been different. It would have been because we've never had like a main character, at least within the trilogy, like
sacrificed himself.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, Luke.
No, but like in each trilogy, I mean.
Gotcha.
Like the main characters in each trilogy.
Right.
And you hardly ever see it now, though, too, with some movies or shows.
Right.
I mean, besides Game of Thrones, at least. But, you know, at least for me, like, I have, it's been a while since I've seen a movie or a show that's willing to kill off its main characters. Or at least ones that you actually, like, do care about, you know? Because usually, I can think of one where they kind of killed off a main character, but then they brought it back, and but they were hyping it up.
Talking about TV shows.
Yeah, TV shows,
right?
Where they're trying to kill off a main character, and it just didn't really have an impact on anyone who saw it.
No. So tell me how you guys feel about the kiss. Yay or nay?
Nay.
It wasn't necessary.
Yeah, and especially kind of weird though too, with the cannon going off. You know, it's like we can protect the people we love, and then they kiss, and literally their base gets blown up right there, and then it's like not the right time, girl.
I mean, doesn't she think that she's dying right now? I mean, is there ever a better time than when you're about to die?
I don't know. I mean, if she thought that, fine, but
yeah, I could take it or leave it. I don't mind it. I actually don't. It's not a big thing for me.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't really care either. But I mean,
it was funny though. My theater's reaction.
But it was just like,
no.
And here we have, truly powerful in many ways, but here we have the embodiment of hope in this entire franchise, who's basically saying the galaxy has lost all its hope, and this is it. This is the end. I mean, I don't think any of us ever thought we'd be at this moment. We would get to see a moment like this. And then here we have, at the last second possible, Luke Skywalker. And again, none of us, I feel anyway, when watching this initially, we're thinking questions like, how did he get there? Where did he find an entrance to all of this? Like, to me, and maybe a lot of us, that was kind of rendered irrelevant, because what we're seeing here is...
I mean, I question, he cut his hair.
Well, I think that just...
Well, yeah.
That sort of proves that we see him as this, like, god or superhero, that we just assume, like, it's Luke Skywalker, of course he's here.
Yeah.
Right. And he cleaned up. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some clues that are planted in, for what ultimately would be the big reveal. But I think what we care most about is just,
he's there to help.
Well, the gravity of the moment. I mean, just seeing Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill in the same scene together is just a momentous thing to witness. And when they were filming this, behind the scenes, the entire crew was just in the quietest of quietest things, like to witness this happen. And right here also, when she reaches out for his hand, she realizes at that moment he's not really there, clearly.
Yeah.
And she's not saying anything, but she knows what he's about to do. And of course, I love John Williams brought back the Luke and Leia theme to play for this. And yeah. Master Luke. I love that little wink right there.
Mm-hmm. Sorry for quiet. Just
No, I mean this is just the music's building up.
Yeah.
Here's the moment. I mean, this is kind of what it's all been building to, you know? And here we are. By the way, John Williams, I felt outdid himself with this music and the score. It felt just much more grand and on a wider scale, and of course these beautiful wide shots that Ryan provided. One of the things that's just so underappreciated, particularly by people who don't like the movie, is just the wonderful vistas. The vistas that he gives us in this movie. Just there are so many parts in the movie where you can just like take a snap of it,
Yeah.
a picture of it, and that it's a beautiful painting. It says so much. And then here we are. Oh, we're gonna see right now when Luke emerges out of this gunfire, and he wipes out his shoulder. You know, like it's supposed to signal that is that all you got, basically. But Ryan was talking about in the commentary how that that was especially meant to trigger Kylo, because that's something that what he did there was part of his training, was part of their relationship as master and apprentice. So
Being like, you're like, I'm still better than you type of thing.
kind of like, yeah, that playful kind of aspect of their relationship, which would be cool to see one day how that would have been like. But yeah,
also, like, from the moment Luke arrives to right before the reveal that he was a projection, if you don't question like what he's doing, or like what he's doing is impossible, you're proving Luke's point that that the whole thing is just kind of getting to his head. The whole superhero aspect, the legend. You know, again, only if you didn't question like everything that he was doing, you're proving his point.
fucking Hux. Oh my god. Isn't he much more memorable as a punchline than as a like whatever he was before? I mean, this is
Ryan Johnson mentioned in audio commentary he didn't take General Hux?
Yes,
he didn't take him seriously, and I agreed with him. Nobody took him seriously until to him being the butt of a joke. I think it was great.
And then here we have the full realization, the full completion of, oh god, this amazing shot right here. Here we have
I
the
love
shot.
His little.
The realization here that what Luke is doing and what Poe has to do is to find a way out and lead them out of here. Ultimately, this is just a distraction. Basically, what they've come to the conclusion is that Luke is sacrificing himself. And yes, this here. I always think of of this shot, you know, of the Twin Suns episode in Star Wars Rebels, the final confrontation between Darth Maul and Obi-Wan Kenobi, because there's a similar framing of it, wide shot. It's almost used to a similar degree, and I guess, look, this is an amazing sequence. You're seeing Luke and Kylo Ren face off, and to me it was, even if I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm watching this for the first time, to my mind I know something's up, but I'm not thinking like force projection. Like, but like it was impressive that, you know, Luke is dodging all of this, and like what the fuck. And what I'm saying ultimately is, I was so wowed by what was going on, and yet people still found something in there to complain that, oh, it wasn't an official lightsaber fight. I mean, Luke is basically like, he stopped an entire army. Here we have this moment that we talked about. What are you looking at me for? Follow him, and look how proud she looks right now when it cuts to her. That smile that Carrie gave. But that moment, what Luke is doing here is he's facing off an entire army. He stopped them in their tracks without with the ultimate representation of what a Jedi is. We're using the Force, not by like all these like lightsaber tricks or like Force pushing walkers away, and did it in self-defense, which is what the Force is, or how Jedi are supposed to be anyway when using the Force. And of course, if you're paying attention to the dialogue, it right now when Rey has this realization, it just comes back the lifting rocks. It's not about lifting rocks, Rey. And then, of course, what does she do at the end of the movie? To save everybody, she has to lift rocks.
Yeah.
Just the joke of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then here we go.
It's so good.
You see, yeah, yep. And again, we just saw 2 shots of Kylo Ren and Luke's feet, and we're reminded.
Did you guys notice that?
Nope.
No,
Mm-mm.
not in. No, I wasn't looking at their. I mean, I knew that. Looking back on it, I know now what they were trying to tell me, but in the moment, like I'm just not focusing on
I'm so
that.
invested in it.
Yes.
It's like,
yes. And again,
yeah,
like this.
right. I don't remember. Does Luke come out for Kylo Ren in the other movie?
Luke? No.
Yeah, it's
No.
just Leia. So he ultimately like does not like Luke, right?
Kylo?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
That's rude. I wish we would have gotten closure in that relationship too.
With Luke and Kylo?
You
Yeah.
could have if you killed off Daisy and let Kylo live.
Or
I know.
Or just ignore the movie.
I just ignored the movie.
Because it's like
Look at this shot. Oh my god.
Luke practically like raised him in a way.
Well, I mean,
So-
again, though, he tried to kill him.
In his mind though, like
No, he
But,
lit
like-
up the lightsaber.
okay, but still it's like they're like family, like you know what I mean?
I never said you have to forgive Luke for what he almost or tried to do. It's just kind of for us at least. You have to understand it. Again, you don't have to forgive him. You just have to understand it from his perspective.
He's like, what the crap?
And mind blown.
Oh, again, for the people that believe that he was gonna turn good, Luke didn't believe he was gonna turn good in this moment right here. By the way, Kylo says, "He came to save me," or was it came to save me? And he's like, "No." Like, he knows Kylo Ren is far gone, which again proves like he was right in that moment that he was gonna turn evil.
Yeah. Like he's not ready yet to go back. Like he's still hurt basically.
No, I mean Kylo's evil.
I think if we're looking at it from just this movie and this movie alone,
Yes.
and what this ending is saying, as far as the ending for Kylo Ren in this movie, is Kylo Ren's decision has sealed his fate in that, yes, he's the big bad of the series now, but with that also comes the significant drawbacks of it. I think to me that the movie ends in a place where it's firmly landing that Kylo Ren is now the big bad of the series, and that he has decided that he is the villain, not necessarily a Sith, but he's using the dark side of the Force to, further his own ambitions now. That's where this movie is landing on. And that last shot that we see of him virtually alone is kind of the fate that he sealed for himself. So I think as far as this movie, open and shut, that's where it lands on. Now, again, when we're talking about what happens in the next movie, I don't even want to go there yet. So it's like, I'm not even factoring that in. Now, with Luke, I can't think of a better way to have ended that story with him. I really can't. That was just perfection. And I mean, really the truest sense of closure in that. And this is, I think, ultimately, this is what choosing the dark side in any way, shape, or form gets you. This is kind of the fate that you doom yourself to. And, yeah, I don't think the movie is mincing. Like, I think the inherent nature of Kylo Ren does, of course, leave the door open for a kind of redemption, but it's not necessarily guaranteeing that. And it's leaving that door or that decision for the next creative director to decide what to do with him, right? It's always there.
Like, for me, sorry to interrupt. For me, like, that moment, I don't think it necessarily sealed his fate, because he's still, like, he regrets what happened with his dad, like, so I don't necessarily, at least for me, like, it's...
Okay, but Thanos hated what he did with Gamora.
Okay, but this is
still makes him evil. Okay, but I'm comparing your characters, though.
Well, look, guys, we can obviously agree to disagree, right? Like, I mean, we don't have to necessarily interpret it the exact same way. I mean, if you got that, Alexis, that's fine. I'm curious to know what Peter thought about that, only because that's an interesting part of it that we haven't really delved into in terms of the differences. And I mean, David clearly feels as if, it slams the door on ultimately Kylo's fate, and then Alexis feels the opposite of it. And what's fortunate is that there was no movie that came out after this, so we can spend the end of time having this debate. But I mean, part of the reason why I think this is to me the true end of the series is because I think they wrapped it up pretty closely. Like, to me, the reason why I kind of fall on the side that this is the direction that Kylo is going to go is, well, how this story ends. And that is, the Resistance survived, which means, the spark is going to come back, the rebellion is going to come back, and of course the Empire, the First Order is going to fall, because hope survived, and hope will remain in the galaxy. And here, what we have here with Broom Boy, as people want to call him, is he's heard now the legend of Luke Skywalker stopping the First Order in their tracks, and him, like, inspiring the next generation, again, reaching beyond just the screen and going into the audience. Yeah, Broom Boy is Rian Johnson, and Broom Boy is all of us who have grown up with Star Wars, who wish we could be in something like this, and makes it possible for people of any background to put themselves in this. It doesn't matter what your name is, it doesn't matter what family you come from. You can be from nowhere, and yet you can still be a hero. And I think that's ultimately, the point of that last shot, and the point of Star Wars in general, which ultimately, I mean, I'm fine with it having ended there. I don't need any more. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, there was nothing more after this. So this was the series finale. Of
that scene, though, with the kids, I still think that's the battle on Hoth, not the battle on Crate, because it was just the first thing that I thought of. Like, oh, it's that scene where Luke stops the AT-ATs in Hoth. And part of I know it's a statue of him with a lightsaber, but my thought was just, again, he said, I became a legend. And usually with legends, stories tend to change throughout time. So instead of him using a plane thingy to stop the AT-ATs, people thought, oh, it's Luke Skywalker. He's the Jedi Master. He cuts down whoever stands in his way with his mighty lightsaber. Like, that could have been the story that kid was telling.
I mean, that could also fit, although, and again, I can't be too sure, but I do think Ryan alluded to that being the Battle of Crate that they were reenacting.
In the audio commentary, when that scene pops up, he just says that that's Luke Skywalker taking back the mantle of the legend. He didn't really say what battle it was.
But I mean, if you're taking back the mantle,
I think that's the point, though.
That's the implication, though, isn't it? That was the Battle of Crate.
No. I think the point is he's still in people's minds this great, like, godly, like,
legends never die.
Yeah. I don't think it, like, matters which one it is, because either way, like,
So, Star Wars, The Last of Jedi?
The Last of the Jedi, Skywalker, Phantom
The last
Menace.
of the Star Wars movies. No, The Last Jedi. I'm sorry, guys. I can't talk anymore. I think I'm dead.
It's just hard to remember all the titles,
Oh, my God. Yes. Was there anything we didn't get to in this commentary about The Last Jedi?
I don't know. I think I said everything that I wanted to, at least for this movie. I'm sure we'll bring up more stuff about this movie in the Rise of Skywalker movie. Because, we got 3 hours still.
Oh, the movie is so long.
What's long?
Rise of Skywalker.
I thought it was shorter than this movie.
No, wasn't it 3 hours?
No. It was not. It felt like 3 hours, but it sure as hell wasn't 3 hours. No. I think The Last Jedi still is the longest official running movie, the longest film of the Star Wars franchise. No, I think Rise of Skywalker was like 10 to 20 minutes shorter. I think it was around there. I can't remember what for sure, but no. It was rumored at one point to have been 3 hours long.
Oh, okay.
But that's not what happened.
Yeah, I just saw it. 2 hours and 22 minutes. I think this one was 2 hours and 38 or something, or 28.
It was 2:30, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
2:30 something.
Yeah.
Oh man. We're gonna be so depressed the next time.
Yeah, so as they've been teasing, the next audio commentary you'll be listening to, guys, is Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. We'll be back, and this time we'll be joined by our counterparts, Kyle Lira and Peter Martinez, so they can join in the fun. Oh my God. I'm honestly exhausted just thinking about what that's going to be like. I really am. But you know what? I think on the note that I want to end on is, this movie, we shouldn't, close this commentary by, ignoring just what's taken place on the day that we recorded it on. And that is, thank you, Ryan Johnson, was trending again on Twitter for the second time, seemingly out of nowhere. And I think, to me, it's something special that this movie, even after the tumultuous, first few years of the controversy and all that crap, it definitely does have its passionate defenders, i.e. us. And people genuinely not just love the movie, but are inspired by it and are reminded about why Star Wars is great in the first place. And so I to me, it already is easily like the best remembered movie of these new movies, and I think it will be much better remembered in a few years.
Yeah.
Give it 10 years. I mean, it already is. That's not saying much, it seems, but yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people who hated this movie, they're always like, no one's gonna remember this in 10, 20 years, whatever. And I so disagree with that.
Well, they're wrong, and they're wrong in this sense because we're not even a whole 5 months after Rise of Skywalker came out, and I'm struggling to remember that movie. What I remember, I remember the pain, but I don't remember the no visuals, no musical cues, no nothing. I'll just remember it just like, ugh. You fell asleep, you said?
Well, okay, to be fair, I was tired. Like, I was dead tired. And it was, like, pretty close to when we saw it the first time. And we just, I think you remember, we just kept thinking about this movie because we were just like, what? Like, we were just very confused. And so I got home from work, and like I said, I was really tired. But I told David, let's go watch it. Like, I want to go see it again. Just to kind of take it all in again. And I ended up falling asleep.
Yeah. It was
About the whole movie?
No.
I think she fell asleep 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty short, though. And I didn't want to wake her up, though, too, because I was like, she's tired.
Yeah, like I was really tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would not recommend going to go see that movie of all movies if you're fucking tired. I mean, yeah, there's just nothing remarkable about the movie except for just how bad it is and how big of a fail it is, which is just it's a depressing conversation, which is why ultimately, look, when I think back at Star Wars, The Last Jedi, not just because it is a great movie, but I do think that the ending of this movie just left it where it needed to be. Like, we know how the story ends, and it's the story of Star Wars, and it's going to go on and on and on. And I feel better about myself, preferring or thinking that the movie ended this way. I mean, the series ended this way, with Leia saying, we have everything we need. And then, of course, the legend of Luke Skywalker inspiring the galaxy once again to stand up to evil. I don't know what more we need. And yeah, but in any case, we're gonna go ahead and do episode 9 because we love to torture ourselves apparently. So that's gonna be fun, and this will be the first commentary that we do with five people.
We'll see how that goes too.
Yeah, because I hope it doesn't turn into like everybody just like, okay, I want to see this, I want to see that. This is how bad. Yeah,
we're probably not even going to talk about the movie, like certain scenes. So we're just going to be disappointed.
Bitch over it.
Yes, we're going to talk about why people are wrong about The Last Jedi, why people are wrong about the whole trilogy, and
because the saddest thing to say about the Rise of Skywalker is that it just shows how Last Jedi was so good. Like, that's what it really does. So, but this will go ahead and do it for us today. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, David. And thank you all those for listening. If you happen to be fans of Rise of Skywalker, I encourage you to listen to our reasonings for why we thought it was just bad in every way, shape, or form in the next audio commentary. Believe me, there will be a lot of reasons. So
I feel like we're gonna go like over the movie, like talk like past the movie.
Yeah. That's kind of what happens when we talk about those kind of movies. But thank you all for listening. Thank you, David. Thank you, Alexis. And we'll see you all next time. Keep it here under the spotlight for more audio commentaries. Bye-bye.
Bye.